The rules are rigged against you. The rules are rigged against you. But immunity is absolute.
You know, the economy often feels like this incredibly complicated game that's rigged against us. And the truth is, most of us, even people with fancy degrees, are basically economically illiterate. Why? Well, nobody ever really taught us the rules. And because of that, we keep falling for ideas that sound really good on the surface, but they lead to some pretty disastrous results. So in this explainer, we're going to change all that. I'm going to give you a permanent mental upgrade, kind of like a shield that makes you impossible to fool. Okay, let's just dive right in with a question that sounds totally backward. I mean, how could making something cheaper, like rent, possibly lead to more of a terrible problem like homelessness? It just goes against every bit of common sense, doesn't it? It feels wrong. But the answer to this one question reveals a fundamental truth about how the world really, truly works. And this is the heart of the problem. We're all out here trying to solve these huge, complex issues using our gut feelings, but we're missing the instruction manual. There are these underlying principles, kind of like gravity, that govern our economic world. And once you see them, well, you just can't unsee them. And the first one? It's probably the most important of them all. So this brings us to principle number 1. You have to follow the incentives. We love to focus on intentions, right? We judge politicians and policies based on what they say they want to do. But economics teaches us this absolutely crucial lesson. Good intentions don't really matter that much. What matters are the rewards and punishments a policy creates. See, people respond to rewards, not to good intentions. Let's look at a perfect real-world example of this. So picture this. The year is 2008, and the state of Maryland really needs some cash. And this idea pops up that sounds brilliant and honestly pretty simple. Let's just tax the rich a little more. At the time, Maryland had about 8,000 millionaires. So state officials did the math and figured out that a new tax on these high earners would bring in an extra $106 million every single year. The plan was passed, problem solved. It felt like a total victory for good intentions. But then reality kicked in. The first year, the tax got collected just like they planned. But the second year, officials went to count the millionaires again. And guess what? There were only 6,000 of them left. A full quarter of them, 2,000 millionaires, had just vanished. Now, they didn't disappear, of course. They just moved. They packed up their businesses, their companies, their restaurants, and of course, all the jobs they provided went right along with them. Now look at the final numbers. Instead of gaining that projected $106 million, Maryland actually lost $257 million in tax revenue. Their good intention backfired in the most spectacular way, leaving the state way worse off than before. And this wasn't some fluke. Oregon tried a similar tax and ended up losing billions over time. So here's the crucial point. Maryland intended to raise money, but what they actually did was create a massive reward for their wealthiest citizens to just leave. The incentive, the reward, was to avoid that higher tax, and that is exactly what people did. You can wish that people would just sit there and pay higher taxes for the greater good, but wishes aren't what drive human behavior. Rewards do. So here's a really powerful way to use this in your own life. Whether it's in your business, with your family, or in your relationships, just stop asking, what do I want people to do? Instead, ask this much, much more powerful question. What am I actually rewarding them for doing right now? The answer to that question will show you exactly why things are the way they are, and more importantly, how you can actually change them. And that leads us straight into our second principle, the unseen cost. You know, economics isn't really about money or what you have. It's about what you do with what you have. Every single choice we make, from buying a cup of coffee to starting a company, means we're giving up something else. It's called a trade-off. And understanding the true hidden cost of these trade-offs is the key to seeing the world clearly. Okay, let's make this super concrete. Imagine you've got a choice. You can buy that beautiful $50,000 luxury car with the leather seats. You'll feel great, like you've really made it. Or you could buy a perfectly reliable $20,000 car and invest the $30,000 difference. Now, on the surface, the cost of the BMW is $50,000, but that's not its real cost. Here's the unseen cost. If you had just invested that extra $30,000 in about 30 years, it could have grown to be worth almost $250,000. So all of a sudden, that luxury car didn't just cost you $50,000, Its true cost was $250,000. That is the trade-off. You're not just spending money, you are spending what that money could have become. This whole idea actually has a name. It's called opportunity cost. It's just the value of the next best thing you gave up. So when you chose that fancy car, you gave up the opportunity for that cash to grow into a small fortune. And this applies to everything. The hour you spend scrolling on your phone is an hour you gave up on, learning a new skill or talking to a friend. Once you start seeing these hidden opportunity costs everywhere, you can never unsee them. So from now on, I want you to change the question you ask yourself before any big decision. It's not just, can I afford this? A much smarter, much more powerful question is, what am I giving up to get this? Answering that question honestly is one of the best financial habits you can ever build. All right, this brings us to our third and final principle, understanding what prices are telling us. We tend to think of prices as these random numbers that greedy companies slap on things. We see a high price and we get angry. But in reality, prices aren't the enemy. Prices are messages. In fact, they are the single most honest signal you can find in the entire economy. There's this famous story that illustrates this perfectly. The Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev was visiting Britain, and he asked Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, "How do you make sure people here get food?" And she just replied, "I don't. Prices do." Just think about that for a second. London, a city of millions, hasn't grown its own food in over a century. And yet every day, fresh fish shows up from Norway, beef from Argentina, coffee from Brazil. There is no minister of sandwiches coordinating this whole thing. It just happens. Prices do it, automatically. See, prices work because they transmit huge amounts of information, almost effortlessly. When something is scarce, its price goes up, and that's a signal to suppliers, hey, make more of this. When there's too much of something, the price falls, which signals them to slow down. So what happens when governments decide to just ignore these signals and force their own prices? Well, let's go back to our very first question and take a look at New York City. So here's how this disaster unfolds step by step. It starts when politicians see that rent is expensive, and they pass a law, rent control, to put a cap on what landlords can charge. The intention is to help. But remember principle 1? Intentions don't matter. At the new, artificially low price, demand just skyrockets. Suddenly, everyone wants their own cheap place. But at the same time, the supply shrinks. Landlords can't make a profit, so why would they fix the leaky roof or the broken heater? Buildings start to rot. Eventually, a lot of landlords just give up and walk away. And the result? Massive shortages and, unbelievably, thousands of abandoned apartments in a city with a huge homeless population. And this is the cruelest irony of all. Policies like rent control are always sold as a way to help the poor, but they always end up hurting them the most. When the very thing people need is made to disappear from the market, who suffers? It's not the wealthy. They can always find a way. It's the poor who are left with absolutely nothing. The solution literally becomes the problem. So here is your tool. The next time you hear a politician promise to make housing or food or healthcare more affordable by controlling its price, you now have the one simple question that cuts through all of the noise. Okay, but what happens to the supply? The answer to that question will tell you everything you need to know about what's really going to happen. So where does all this leave us? By understanding these core principles, incentives, opportunity cost, and prices, you're not just learning a few facts. You're developing a whole new way of seeing the world. You're building what I like to call economic immunity. You're moving from a state of being constantly fooled to a state of seeing things with total clarity. And this isn't some temporary hack or a clever little trick. This is a permanent upgrade to your mental software. You can't unlearn that incentives matter more than intentions. You can't unsee the hidden opportunity cost in every choice you make. And you can't unknow that prices are honest signals. This knowledge doesn't just make you smarter, it makes you immune to the economic nonsense that fools millions of people every single day. So I'll leave you with one final question to think about. I want you to look at your life right now, your time, your money, your energy. Based on everything we've talked about, what is one trade-off you are making today that your future self will either thank you for or curse you for? Answering that is the first step in using these principles to build a better future. Thanks for joining me.